coming again for our third session about domestic violence, breaking the silence. It's not an easy topic to talk about or to sit here and listen, and there's a lot of questions people have. Why victims say, why they leave, why they don't leave, all kinds of questions. What happened in the court system, in the police departments. But our guest speaker tonight is Summer Sizemore. She's a victim advocate at the Greenville City Police Department.
I'm so glad my room is small because my throat hurts, so thank you guys for coming. First of all, I know
Summer, if you need to use a microphone, there's one behind you. You just need to flip the switch on it if you need it. Yeah.
If I ever get low and y'all can't hear me, please yell at me, get my attention, and I'll grab the microphone first, okay? I am Summer Sizemore, victim advocate with the Greenville Police Department. Greenville City only, so we're a very small jurisdiction that we cover. But the roles of a victim advocate within the police department is going to be the same as the sheriff's office, Simpsonville. Basically, any law enforcement agency that you have, we're going to have the same services that we offer to victims, okay? So it's my understanding you guys have had Ms. Sharon speak from a victim standpoint, and then you had someone from the solicitor's office. I'm thinking the solicitor more than likely probably covered the court system, the services they offer there, and unfortunately how charges are downgraded from maybe domestic violence 1 to 2. Am I correct? Okay. So I won't touch on statutes and limitations, okay? I will solely focus on my role as an advocate and then the part we play as a police department in domestic violence, if that's okay with you guys. Is that okay? All right. I'm informal. I have no long speeches. Everything is impromptu with the fact of some statistics that I cannot commit to memory that I wish to share with you guys. So generally, I let my crowd lead my topics. Is there anything in particular anyone wants me to cover before I dive into a typical day as a victim advocate?
So I would like for you to cover a time with a victim, your first time with a victim.
Okay. Well, before we get there, we all know what domestic violence is, right? Yes. It is a pattern of abuse and control on an intimate partner, whether it's a current partner or it's a past partner. It is a system of control. Okay? So with that definition, we've got 4 types of domestic violence. It's common. We all know the physical abuse, pushing, hitting, slapping, anything that violates my persons, we know is physical abuse. We all know about the emotional abuse. That's my name calling. That's my unwanted gestures of intimidation. That may be staring me down when I enter a room, watching to see if I speak with this male here, just controlling my every action based on gestures alone. Those are pretty much the typical things everybody thinks of when you think about domestic violence. But there are 2 forms of abuse that goes unnoticed, and it needs a lot of attention. Sexual abuse, just as it sounds like. He may use that intimate partner solely for his sexual pleasure. He may practice unsafe sex with her. That's a form of abuse. Studies show that STDs are on the rise based on domestic violence, abuse, and intimate partner relationships. 4th form is property and economic abuse. He knows I cherish certain items. He may destroy my items. That's a form of control.
What did you say?
If I cherish a certain item, a form of property abuse may be him destroying that property as a way of controlling me. Economically, he may prohibit me from getting a job. He may harass me on my job and cause me to lose my job. Or he may not want me to get an education. If I get no education, I'm unemployable. If I'm unemployable, I'm solely dependent on him. And that's the control that he's looking for. So based on what we know, Any ideas on who can be a victim of domestic violence?
Anyone.
Anybody. No prejudices, doesn't care how many degrees you hold, what type of home you live in, what type of car you drive. If he can get power and control solely for his pleasure, then I am a victim of domestic violence. Okay? I was thinking about a quote to kind of kick us off and kind of let you know what I think goes on in someone's mind when they're thinking.
She can't hear you.
I'm
Could you
sorry.
get your speaker, your loudspeaker?
Get my loudspeaker. Oh, yeah. You gonna make me use a mic?
Your microphone. I'm backwards. Okay, okay.
There you go.
This is intimidating. Let me try yelling louder before I go to this, okay? Yeah, let's move this up. So in thinking about something that I could tell you guys to kind of put you in the frame of mind of what a victim is facing with the partner that she's been with for 5, 10, 15 years, I took a quote from Lundy Bancroft, which says, "The abusive man's high entitlement leads him to have unfair and unreasonable expectations, so that the relationship revolves solely around his demands. His attitude is, you owe me. For each ounce he gives, he wants a pound in return. He wants his partner to devote herself fully to catering to him, even if it means that her own needs and those of her children get neglected. Victims can pour all of their energy into keeping their partner content, but if his mindset is to solely fulfill his own gratification, she will never succeed. He will keep feeling that you are controlling him because he doesn't believe that you should set any limitations on his conduct or insist that he meet his responsibilities." That's a quote from Lundy's book, Why Does He Do That? Inside the Mind of an Angry and Controlling Man. So a lot of times we'll ask women, whether we verbally ask them or based on our gestures and our comments, we want to know, why do they stay? You can do bad by yourself. You got your children to take care of, so why do you stay?
That's true.
That's easier said than done. If I'm solely dependent on this man and he's beat me down emotionally, why do I want to leave? Who wants me? Who thinks that I'm worthy of their attention? So if the abuser can get you mentally, 9 times out of 10 you'll stay. Studies show for at least 5 or 6 instances after you call the police. Okay? Now, any questions so far?
So how would you respond if you, what would you say to a victim? What can you say legally to a victim? How far can you go and what can you say?
I am in this role with the police department. I am not a counselor, so I cannot legally give any counseling services. As a victim advocate, my role is to empower and to help build self-esteem by offering referral services, helping locate referral services, providing handouts and brochures on community organizations that may be out and available to help preparing victim impact statements and accompanying them to court. A lot of times, and people don't realize, your case goes nowhere if the victim does not go to court. So that victim has to stand at a podium. If we're in municipal court, which is a domestic violence third, so that victim stands here, that abuser stands here, the judge is there, and the entire time she's standing here, he's standing here, and he will stare a hole in her because that is an intimidating gesture, and he still wants to control her even in the court system. So I will go with them, and I stand and block his view. It's a simple gesture, but guess what? I've broken your cycle. I've broken your pattern. It may only be for 10 minutes, But for 10 minutes, I will not allow you to stare at her, and I will not allow you to intimidate her anymore. That kind of. So let's say a victim calls dispatch to report an incident. There are 3 cycles of abuse. First, she's got to go through the honeymoon phase. Maybe he hit her one time, or maybe he just verbally abused her. But in this phase, she's going to threaten, I'm going to leave you, I'm going to leave you. He sweet talks her, she stays. It progresses to her actually being hit, and today she wants to do this. First time, but I still want to talk. Call comes in to dispatch, officer goes out to the scene. Officer arrives, he interviews 2 people definitely, maybe witnesses if we have more. He first speaks to the accuser. If the accuser is irate, we need to de-escalate the situation, so we always want to speak with him first. When he speaks with the victim, he wants to know certain things. First thing he wants to know is, does she need medical attention? Then he wants to know, are there any children in your home, and if so, did they witness the incident? If there are children in the home, legally we must call DSS and report that children have been witnesses to domestic violence. Once this victim hears, not only am I threatened with losing my home, my source of income, the one man that I thought loved me, you are now telling me that legally you have to call DSS and I may lose my children if I don't do what DSS wants me to do. After we jump that hurdle and we determine that there are children there, the officer is now looking for signs of abuse. What does he see on her person that he may need to document and take photos of? Were there any weapons involved? If we've got children, if we've got weapons, if she's pregnant, depending on the severity of the incident and how many times we've been called out to the scene, that will determine the level of charge. DV3 is the lowest, DV2, and then DV1 is the highest. If you have a weapon, children are present, or you are pregnant, it's automatically domestic violence 2. Okay? Even if that woman says, I've changed my mind, I do not want to press charges, Greenville Police Department, as with other municipalities, have to act in the best interest of that woman, and we pick up the charges on her behalf. So it is no longer victim pressing charges against abuser, it becomes the state of South Carolina pressing charges against the abuser. He's arrested, off he goes, the victim is handed a victim notification form, which is where I come into play. On this form, it lists a victim's rights from top to bottom. You have the right to a speedy trial, you have the right to be fully informed, you have a right to go to bond hearings, you have a right to be present at all other court hearings. And then the list goes on and on, but the victim gets that form. That does not mean that I am obligated to call her. Unfortunately, the state of South Carolina puts the responsibility on the victim and says, if you want these services, you got to call the number on this form. That's what the state says, but that is not what the Greenville Police Department says. I get the form, I call you whether you want to hear from me or not. And 9 times out of 10, they do not want to hear from me. Because guess what I got to tell them? You know when that officer told you he was calling DSS? Well, he's not the one that calls DSS. I'm the one that calls DSS. So this is what I need you to do. I have to tell the victim they need to be available for DSS. I have to tell the victim, do not dodge DSS. As long as you work with them, you are not in jeopardy of losing your children. I'm legally required to tell them that, which means they then tend to hang up the phone on me, depending on how they are of going the cycle of abuse. My number one goal is to equip my victims with knowledge. I want my victims to know that they are not alone, that there are more people that have walked in their shoes than they can ever imagine, and I happen to be one of those people. So I always try to relate to my victims on a personal level. And once I relate to them, it becomes easier for me to offer them services. I first want to tell them that they can get an order of protection. And then I make an appointment for them to sit down with me to fill out about 7 pieces of paper to help them get that order of protection, which, by the way, they are not guaranteed to get. We can complete the paperwork, they can take it to the family court, get their court hearing. But if he is not personally served with his notice to be at that court hearing, she will never get that order of protection.
Why would he not be served?
He will dodge service. I can see you through my window knocking on my door, but I don't have to answer my door. So they can just avoid that service. And as long as they avoid that service and nobody gets a signature from someone that's over the age of 18 that can say that they personally know that abuser, he's not served. And if he's not served, she never gets the order of protection.
Let me touch a little bit on that part too, also the service.
Speak
If
up.
they wait too long for the protection, to file a protection order, a judge will assume they're not afraid of this abuser because they waited too long to file. I had many women get the protection order denied because they waited 7, 8, 9 days before they got into court. The judge saw it as well. Obviously, you weren't that afraid because you waited too long to file, so it's got to be done timely also.
Assuming they get service, he served, legally we must hold a hearing within 15 days of the day of the incident. An order of protection is generally good for 6 months. You can always go back before the expiration date and ask for an extension, but you're not guaranteed to get that. And one thing I always tell victims is, I live in the real world, and it is at the end of the day a piece of paper. As disheartening as that sounds, and as cruel as that may sound, it is a piece of paper. It cannot keep anybody from doing anything that they want to do. So along those lines, I go a step further and encourage my victims to go to Safe Harbor, go to Compass of Carolina, or their own private counseling service, anywhere to where you can get counseling services that can chip away at those blocks of self-doubt and, worthlessness that you feel. If we can chip that away, and we can build back up your self-esteem, you can become employable. You can be self-sufficient. We can chip away at the control that he has on you, and you can take better steps to enter a healthy relationship and to just be more aware of the dangers that you face, whether it be from the old partner or possibly from a new partner that you may have. Make sense so far? Any questions?
Doesn't sound like a lot of, well, I don't know what I expect as far as protection is, but it does not sound like a lot, that you have a lot of protection.
I'm a shoot from the hip kind of girl, won't lie to you, there is not a lot. All it is the victim has to be willing to call what? 911. The officer comes out and does their job in responding. We will get it to the solicitor's office, and our lawmakers have made the rules on the laws and the imprisonment that our abusers will face. I'm a believer in each one teach one. Domestic violence will continue to be a problem if we all do not speak up. It takes everybody in this room and everybody outside of this room, whether you've been personally affected by domestic violence or not, to be a change. South Carolina was ranked #1 in a row a few years ago for domestic violence. We just now became #5 in the country. #5 ain't looking too great,
That's right.
but it's better than #1.
So is there a reason why the state continues to rank so high versus other states?
I have not found or heard of a legal published reason, but I think it's just basically what I've said. It's a revolving cycle. We don't, victims don't call. For obvious reasons, they don't call to report. So if there's no reporting, there's no action. It's almost like the lawmakers have to see this is a big problem to change the law. As bad as that sounds, if they look at the current statistics, example, we had 500,000 incidents last year. That's 500 reported. That's 500,000 reported. You've got another 500,000 that wasn't reported. So I think it's going to take, unfortunately, the responsibility on the victim to call 911. Law enforcement has to respond. We've got to put the pressure on the solicitor's office. We all have to put the pressure on the lawmakers, and the change has to come within the laws.
It also seems to me, and listening to what you've said, and based on what the solicitor said last week, that I guess from our laws that someone accused of something is continued to be assumed innocent until proven guilty. But in this situation where people are, for lack of a better word, in such close quarters to each other, why isn't there a push for legislation that pushes for something for separation of that when those things happen more immediately, and maybe some onus if there is some initial evidence of truth of something really going on, where there is some more onus put on to the person that's doing the abusing to make corrections. There's a lot of what's been said is, this person's holding up the family, and the person that's the victim is relying on this person, but still force, maybe the fact that he or she has to do that, even in that situation, during these periods of separation until, there can be some truth in what's going on. Why don't we see those types of things happening?
At my level, I cannot provide you with an answer. I think it all goes back to, did the solicitor's office share with you guys the number of cases that they get in a year?
It's very high.
Yeah, it's very
It's
high.
very high.
The solicitor's office in total gets over 5,000 cases a year. You know how many they take to trial? 67.
67.
67 cases goes to trial.
Do you blame that on the victim not coming forward?
No, ma'am.
Not blame, blame may be the wrong word, but the victim, the reason it doesn't get pushed any further. One thing that I noticed you saying, that if I feel like I'm getting beat, that I can call, well, I am getting beat, I can call and I can leave. I can go somewhere safe. You have those places and things, but the first thing you gotta do is get inside of here and make me know that you can do this, you can survive, you can make it. So I go back on, the victim got to step forward and fight for herself. You can do all you can. Haven't been there. Fear was my greatest thing. Fear. I was afraid that it was going to get worse, but I convinced myself it was going to get better.
Right.
So there was that fear that was twisted around in there, till finally I had to say, this is it, I'm not taking this anymore, and leaving with just 3 kids and $1.50 in my pocket. But that had to come from in here. No advocate, no course, nobody could convince me that you can do this. So I go back on and I said it to say, we victims have to come to the point where we got to help ourselves. You are there for backup, and you can do this, but we got to help ourselves. And that fear is a terrible thing.
Remember when I said 6 or 7 calls before they actually decide they want to do something?
Yeah.
That's basically along the same line.
I ran away and went to a safe place, a safe spot, where he did not know where I was. But he convinced me on the phone, I'm not gonna do this again, this won't happen anymore. I fell for it.
But a lot of times, even if the lady leave or whatever, sometimes, I mean, I have known several cases, they still get killed because the man will go to the job or wherever they may be. I know a case right here in Greenville where this lady, she worked at the bank and the man went there and killed her.
I got workplace violence as one of my topics. So let me share some stats with you, which I found kind of alarming. Throughout the country, OSHA only requires employers to provide safe working conditions from known dangers. So if you do not disclose to your employer that you're a victim of domestic violence, they are under no obligation to keep you safe, which makes it easy for abusers to walk in and abuse you on your job. Presently, in South Carolina, there are no laws to protect victims from being fired as a result of their domestic violence. So what I mean is, if I got a black eye and I don't want to go to work, I'm embarrassed, maybe I'm in the hospital, my employer can fire me. I am not protected from losing my job because I'm a victim of domestic violence. If my work performance goes downhill as a result of my domestic violence, I can lose my job. If I'm tardy because of my domestic violence, I can lose my job. So South Carolina's employers are not protected.
Are there laws protecting victims from those circumstances in other states? I mean,
Yes.
Are there models for that elsewhere?
Yes, yes, sir, they are. California, Pennsylvania, New York, there are models out there. And some of the bigger organizations like Eastman Kodak, Verizon, State Farm, Prudential, the bigger companies that have offices and headquarters maybe in those larger cities, they actually have adopted their own internal system to help keep their employees safe.
Is there a model for that in the state? Is there other employers that you can point to and see what they're doing?
Outside of those that I named, the State Farm, no. And I think we do have one of each of those here in South Carolina. So it's out there. It's just a matter of our lawmakers and our legislative, folks and our lobbyists actually saying, hey, here's a problem. What can we do to change it?
Is there any sort of concerted effort it seems like from what you were saying, and I don't know, maybe this is my perception, is that part of the problem is that victims don't have any sense that there is this advocacy, that there is protections. I mean, I have to admit, when from what you said at first, that you painted a pretty bleak picture of what you're facing if you're in that situation. And has there been any sort of, like informational campaign and things like that?
Well, up until about,
Speak up a little bit.
up until maybe 20, 25 years ago, victim advocates didn't exist. So I guess in that aspect, we are relatively new. I think beforehand, the consensus has been we don't talk about domestic violence if it happens in your home. And unfortunately, that's still ingrained in a lot of our minds. So now that the help is here, we are not doing a good job at letting victims know we are here. And even if we are out there saying, hey, you know, I'm here, the victim still has to want to pick up the ball and come to us. But, yes, ma'am.
Do you think that a lot of these cases are not solved because the victims don't follow through out of fear?
The way that we work at the police department, and I can only speak for the city police department, is our officers, we absolutely do not drop charges, warrants. You called us. You called us, we came. We did our job. Our job is to protect you. We are not dropping. We get calls all the time. I thought about it. I don't want to go through with it. I'm going to leave him, but I just want to drop the charges. I don't want the hassle. And I have to tell him I am so sorry, but according to state law, we are looking out for your best interest, and we have to follow through. Now, on a municipal level, and again, that's domestic violence 3, we get them into court rather quickly. If you're arrested today, your court hearing is probably going to be within 2 weeks, 3 at the most. We know when we get higher, they literally sit and wait for over a year. Okay? If the solicitor has decided this is a case that I can take to court and win, they will sit and wait for a year, if not longer. If for whatever reason that solicitor feels like I cannot take this case to court and I cannot get a conviction or a conviction that I'm looking for, that's when you start to see them plead the charges down to a lesser charge.
I don't understand. If you said so many cases came, but only 67 went, what causes such a difference in what actually go and what actually get reported? Help me understand the difference right in there.
Without certainty, and I can only say what my lieutenants and my captains have told me, is simply they don't have the manpower to take in more cases. So when they look at what cases can I get a conviction from,
Okay.
that's how they choose what cases actually go to court. Solicitor's office, every month, they have what's called a domestic violence court. Meeting, I'm sorry. Did she talk to you guys about that? Did she tell you that at that meeting, victims can stand up and say, I want to drop the charges? So we don't let them drop our charges if it's municipal, but if it's anything higher, that's out of our control.
Now, that means they sign a form that says they
Yes.
want to drop, they don't drop it. It's just, there's a lot of victims that come in there, they need that piece of paper to take back home to show their husband or their boyfriend that they're dropping the charges, whether they really want to or not. They need that to stay safe because they're not leaving them. So they can sign that piece of paper saying they're dropping it, whether they really want to or not. But a lot of times it's for their safety. But again, they don't drop it, they may plead. But then also, you said a year. I've got one that it's been a year and a half. He got an attorney, so every 3 months they're in court. She has to get a babysitter, she has to take out time off work, to sit in court for 2 to 3 hours until his case is called. Nothing happens, 3 months down the road, she's off work again. So a lot of times they'll agree and say, let's just plea deal this out and get it over with. She's missing work, she's paying daycare. And it's every 3 months. I'm there every 3 months with her.
Is she with him still? Or
No,
they
but
separated?
she wants, they
Yeah,
want it done.
yes, she wants something done.
I
I
had one
got
on 2.5 years.
you.
Every 3 months, we were in court to see if he would plead guilty. And once the attorneys get involved, that can drag it out. And she can't miss time. She's got kids to support, or she's got herself to support, so it makes it harder.
Yes, ma'am.
I would say that, and I had a situation myself, that my husband pushed me down, and I called, we lived in the county, but I just called on the police number that I knew.
Right.
And they said, well, you gotta call the county. So I go out and get in my car, because that's what I'm going down to the police station. Get in my car, Then my husband comes out and he grabs the car door. And of course I just hit the brakes and so he could, fall off, have to let go. Well, I went down to the county and they came, but the city came up there. But anyway, then the county had sent somebody, but the police didn't tell me, we'll send somebody from the county. They said, you'll have to cost them. By the time I got back home, then they told him, he told them that I tried to run over him. And they told me that they told him he could press charges against me. And they told me I could press charges against him. And so, but to make then I didn't trust the police, because I said, well, what kind of protection have I got? They could see that all this food was in the floor where he knocked me down. But anyway, so I asked them to stay until I got my things. But now I've never gone back because I can't stand any kind of violence. So I never went back. I've never looked back. I just got my bird. And my case, and I that place. But I didn't know all of this about advocates and people could help you or nothing, and nobody offered to me. The way they told me as well, he can go by Thursday, this was like on a Monday, he can go by Thursday and he can press charges against you and we have to lock you up. That's exactly what he said to me. Or you can go down there and we can slap both of y'all up.
Well, remember I told you, the officer goes out and the officer does his interview. So when he's interviewing both the suspect and the victim, he's got to gather information. It's not enough for him to assume or to think something happened. He could know all day you are a victim of domestic violence. But if he cannot make that charge stick when he goes in front of that judge to seek that warrant, if there's not enough evidence, if you have no physical evidence on you that can help him determine who the primary aggressor is, that officer knows when I go to this judge, that judge is going to deny this warrant. So what can I do in this case to separate these two parties? And a lot of times what they'll do is tell the both of them, she can press charges against you and you can press charges against her. Can you guys separate for the evening? Not pretty, but at the end of the day, if there is no evidence to support his claim or your claim of domestic violence, that judge is not going to give him a warrant. And
What's evidence then? Is it somebody blacking your eye or
it could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be eyewitness accounts, it could be just the account of events from the victim and the account of events from the subject. If they don't add up, if he's able to just through the interview verbally tell that, such and such subject is not being honest, then he can go and seek a warrant. But the officer is only as good as the judge behind him.
Well, I think that person that's making the complaint ought to be able to get a warrant. I don't think it should be that way. I was making the complaint.
Well, let me tell you this. We get plenty of people that get mad at their boyfriend on a Friday because she knows he's going to the club and he will not be coming back home. And she instigates an argument. And the first thing she does is threaten him with 911. And then we go out and we invest time and effort into her story. And we want her story to be true, only to find out she took him back on Sunday because he came back home on time. So it has to be more than just somebody's verbal account of events. I will not lie, the system is not set up for victims. Ms. Munson will tell you that as a solicitor. It is not set up for victims. The burden of proof will always be on the victim to prove that she is truly a victim of domestic violence. or any other crime for that matter, not just domestic violence, but as ugly as it is, that's where we're at.
Well, he did say he pushed me. But he didn't, he said I pushed him, but I didn't hurt him. But I mean, what he thought was hurt. I'll to be honest, I just like, right then I was like, hell, he could kill me, they wouldn't care. I better get out of here, and I just left.
You and the girl,
I just couldn't go. Then I heard-
into that own working point.
Yeah. But what I don't understand, just like, you know, it's what take out a warrant from and all this, okay. If the man know where you work, which there have been some cases here. If the man know where you work or where you move to, a lot of times they do come out and they kill you. You will get killed. Just like I said, I know a case, this man, the case at the bank, and as big as that place was, Walmart and all that, and he was using a knife. And he just kept stabbing until he killed him.
Well, remember that order of protection? On paper, that order of protection looks great. It spells out everything an abuser cannot do. When you go in front of the judge, you tell the judge, I work at ABC company, I reside at 123 Street. My mother lives at XYZ Street, and these are the places that I go. That judge puts in that order, Mr. So-and-so, you cannot go to places 1, 2, 3, 4, however long the list may be.
Oh.
The order is clocked in, and both parties are given a copy of what? A piece of paper. If that abuser is intent on hurting you, we all know there is not a piece of paper in the world that will save you. And victims have to realize that. You know, the court system, the law enforcement, it's there to help you, but it can only go so far. It cannot control the actions of another person.
Well, I've never witnessed anything like that, but I was just wondering, well, what can you do? I mean, I don't understand it. If you don't have 24-hour protection, what can you do?
I don't have an answer for that.
I can help with workplace violence. They need to tell your employer. Some employers won't work with you, but many will. I work with a lot that, there's a temp service here that we had a victim. Once she left her husband, she let the temp service know that she had order of protection. She works as a nurse through St. Francis. St. Francis, anytime her husband finds out where she's at, they move her to another location. So St. Francis Hospital is helping her with the protection order. But everybody knows, you really do need to some people don't want their employer to know. I've had Chick-fil-A call me, I've had 2 other restaurants, managers call me and said, I've got a lady who I believe is a victim, what do I do? So they're reaching out. But they will help. Many will help keep you safe, but they have to know and give them the protection or give them a copy of it. I tell all of them, give your boss a copy of that protection.
But according to OSHA, they are only required to protect you from what? Known dangers. You have to tell them. If it's not a known danger, they cannot protect you.
Well, I know the case where this lady was going to work, getting out of her car, her husband killed her. I mean, you know.
So I think on that note, is there ever anything that's going to totally 100% put a bubble around a victim? No.
No, I know what you're saying. But they have, jobs have groups for alcoholics, for addicts. They have all kinds of groups on jobs. So how would you, what would you do to get the government to try to get more businesses to have something like that on the job? That way more people would know what's happening with you, and you would be like really supported in your job place.
Well, it takes a community, you know. The voice of one can be the voice of many, but that one voice has to speak up. So if we're going to speak up, we have to lobby. We have to, you know, Mr. Joe Blow here is coming up for re-election. Well, let's call his office and let's see if we can have a sit-down meeting with him and discuss domestic violence in my community. You got to start close to home. You start with your district, And if you can get your congressman on board, you don't know what your congressman can take to Columbia. But you gotta be an active voice and you gotta start small. A lot of people think change comes from the top. It has to work its way up to the top. Nobody at the top is gonna do anything until they hear all the small people jump, yell, scream, and bleed.
Until their sister get, when their sister, their cousin, then you hear something. Yeah. When it hits home.
Exactly.
And don't forget your solicitors face voters as well.
Exactly.
That's it.
The solicitors face voters as well, so
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be a Congress, it could be on a much lower level.
Before I close, I want to kind of circle back. I think in domestic violence, we always forget the children. They're often overlooked because we think the children go with the mother and the mother's going to protect the children. And that's all great, but mom can't work on children if mom's not together, right? So we put these children out into this community, and now my child goes to school, and if my child's in domestic violence in the home, my child will act out. My child will be aggressive at school, amongst other things. They may lack attention, so their school performance may fail. They may have depression and so on and so forth, but for the sake of domestic violence, if we don't pay attention to our children, our cycle will come back full circle. So for all of the victims of domestic violence, when I interact with them, I give them my view on children and how it's very important that we nurture our children. If our children are unfortunate and they see us as a victim of domestic violence, we've got to go back and break down everything that they learned as a result of seeing that abuse. We've got to teach our men how to love. We've got to teach them that it's not appropriate to hit me as a form of love. We've got to teach them that it is not okay to try to control me. Unfortunately, as a society, we want our men to be big, strong, and tough. And we teach them that aggression and physical violence is how they accomplish that mission. So if we've got a cycle of men thinking that that's how he deals with every woman in his life, and we've got a cycle of women who grew up watching her mom be abused, we've got two broken people coming together in a relationship only to produce more broken people.
How many advocates has the police, city police got?
Two.
What's your workload right now?
You know, I don't know if, I wouldn't say I have a workload because I have all victims. It could be a victim of an auto breaking. I may only devote 10, 15 minutes to you, just enough to get you information in the mail about protecting your identity. I may have 10 of those on Monday, and I may have no cases on Tuesday. So I don't know if I really have a steady workload, but I do have my victims of domestic violence that I hold their hand until they are gone through the solicitor's office. Solicitor's office has a victim advocate, and that's great. But I met you at the beginning, when you finally got the courage to make the phone call, and I was the one that tried to whisper words of encouragement. And knowing that you heard nothing I said on the first phone call, but by the time I called you for the 5th time, I'm the person that hopes something I said sunk in. So my commitment to my victims is to walk them through until we see closure. Whatever that closure